Hi, I'm RC Jim. In this video I want to show you how to get started with a Spektrum NX6 or similar NX type transmitter from Spektrum. This is a video that's intended for beginners, so somebody that you don't know much of anything about this particular transmitter, you want to get started, you want to set up a plane and get it going. Okay, so as far as the Spektrum transmitter goes, you got an on-off button under this plastic logo piece here in the middle. You'll hold that down to get it going. You've got naturally your gimbals here. These are the things that you control with. Most common for somebody starting out is mode 2, and for mode 2, this over here is a joystick. So it's just like you're flying a real-life airplane. Like a World War I or World War II model. It has a joystick. You pull back to go up, you push down to go forward, you push to the right to roll over, bank over to the right, to the left to go over to the left. On the left stick you've got your throttle going up and down, and that'll stay put more or less to wherever you leave it. And then you've got your rudder going right and left, and that's mainly used for steering the plane on the ground. You've got a screen here. This is not a touch screen, but it displays things in color and stuff that you can see. You've got 3 buttons down the side. This one's got an X on it, that one's got a back arrow, and this has got a function, FN, on it. So basically you're going to be using the back arrow for the most part on this set of buttons over here. On this side you've got a scroll wheel which goes right and left, but also can be pressed in to click. So that's like an enter key when you press in to click it, and you go right and left scrolling it in order to select between different items. You have a number of different switches, and on a NX8 and above you'd also have one or more dials and or sliders. These switches can be programmed to do different things. So for example, on this switch I have it set up for flight modes. And with a flight mode, the idea is when it's in this up position, everything is very docile and easy to control. Very slight movements as you move the controls and things like that. And when you put it in the middle, it gets a little bit more aggressive, and when you put it all the way down it gets very aggressive to where you can do very tight rolls and loops and things like that. So it makes it easy as far as taking off and landing to have it in a more docile sort of setting to where it's a little bit easier controlling it. Once you're up in the air, hey, you can really go for it and really flick it around. I've got flaps for my planes that have flaps here, 2 different settings, takeoff flaps and potentially landing flaps. Although you find oftentimes it's easier to land a plane without the flaps, believe it or not. Over here I've got landing gear on this switch, and when I've got stabilization I use this switch to turn it on or off, and potentially to turn on a safe mode should the receiver have that. And of course that's something to learn about later. Over here, this is our throttle cut. So I have all of these switches to where everything is pushed away from me instead of the safest starting sort of setup. Like I'm first firing up the plane and getting the battery installed, all the switches are away, so the throttle is cut when that switch is pushed back. When I push it this way, then the throttle is active. So if I've got the throttle cut on and I accidentally bump up on the throttle stick, it's not going to do anything. Okay, so that's a safety feature, having that. Okay, the switch I'm not doing much of anything with, nor that one there. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what sort of switches and things are on there. Now, let's talk about if you're going to set up a plane for the very first time, what are you going to have to do? Oh, I didn't mention the trim tabs. With the sticks, you've also got trim tabs. And as you think about a trim tab on a full-size airplane, it might be a wheel that you turn or something like that, but it's something when you got it set, it keeps the plane going nice and straight and level, when the thing is set right and you're not moving the sticks around. So it might be that when you first get your plane up there, it wants to go up or it wants to go down. Then you would use your elevator trim tab. And every time you give it a click, it changes one tiny little amount in terms of up or down. So if the nose is going down, you'll be clicking it a few times to pull back on the stick a little bit in its middle position, and that will help it to level out. Going right and left, you might use the aileron. If on the ground it's not going straight when you're taxiing, you might use the rudder trim tab to straighten it out there. Okay, so that's our basic controls as far as that is concerned. Oh, we do have a bind button here, and this is also used for a range test. And we'll talk about that in a bit. And on the back, you've got a USB port, and that can be used to hook up to a flight simulator type software. You've got a plug that can be used to link up transmitters together, and you got this connector here that can be used to hook up other accessories. Okay, so to turn it on, first off, you hold down on that middle button until it lights up. And it'll come up with whatever might be in there in terms of a plane. And you can start out, acro is what they call the plane that's just the default sort of thing. You can just simply start out with that and modify it. They also have templates that you can choose and things like that, but we're going to be looking at something that's very basic. So let's set up a model. First thing you do is we press in on the scroll wheel here. That gives us this function list menu. There's two menus. There's a function list menu, and then there's also a system setup menu. And think of setup. This is how we want to get things set up. So that's where you're going to start as far as setting things up. Immediately, it will warn you the fact that it's going to disconnect any sort of radio signal, so obviously you don't want a plane to be hooked up when you're doing this. So then it gets us to the system setup screen. And we're basically going to go from the start and go down. So we go to Model Select, and you can pick a particular model that is already there. You can add a new model from a template. If you've got a bind and fly plane, you can actually pick one that E-Flight or whoever has designed for you. Well, let's say you have to do it yourself. So you're adding a new model here. You get to choose what type of model it is. So it's already highlighted there, but I need to press in to select that, and then I can scroll to the right or left, and I can pick different types of models. So I'm going to pick just a normal plane with a motor. So I'm going to say create it. Having done that, model type is what we've already selected, so that's all fine. Back arrow to get out of that. Model name, I can give it any name that I want, and so I scroll to get to where acro has got a box around it, then I press in, and it's starting right there at the left edge, and whatever I type is going to type over top of that. So I could go any as a name, and then I don't want any more, so just put in spaces to get rid of that. Okay, so go back, this back arrow here. Okay, the aircraft type is going to be what sort of wing we've got. So is it just a normal wing with a single channel for the ailerons, or is it going to have flaps, or what's going to happen with this? Now, this does not have to do with how many servos are on the ailerons. It has to do with how many channels are used to control the ailerons. So it might be you've got a single servo in the middle, and as that goes back and forth, that's one side of the arm is controlling one arm. One side of the arm is controlling one aileron, and the other side of the arm is controlling the other one. Or it might have a servo on each one, but it's got a Y harness connected between them to where one connector on the receiver is split into two to go to the two servos and control them, but it's still a single channel on the servo that's controlling the ailerons. So that's what that would be. You can have a situation where you've got something different. So if I highlight this, I can then change to, highlight that there. I can then change that to other things, such as it might have dual ailerons to where each aileron is connected to a different channel. So you got a separate channel for each. Allows for, if let's say they're not exactly the same or whatever in terms of both being even, they can have the center position changed on each one. A variety of different things you can do, but mainly to just avoid having the Y harness and having them controlled separate. And then you can have a flap-around situation. That's where you got two separate channels, a servo on each, but you're going to have a situation where both can go down together to simulate flaps, but then while they're down, they can still go back and forth to control the airplane. Back up, they operate like normal. Down, they're still operating as ailerons, but as flaps as well. You can have a situation where you got one aileron and one flap. So again, one channel for the ailerons, one channel for the flaps. You can have one aileron channel and two channels for the flaps. You can have two channels for the ailerons, one for the flaps, two channels for each. So whatever the situation is, you've got that as an option. So let's just say you got an ordinary plane without flaps, you got normal ailerons, that's that. Tail, you can then select between normal and V-tail and how many servos are involved with it and things like that. So again, let's just say you've got a normal tail, and this is talking about the elevator, that's talking about the vertical fin. So one servo, one channel on each. Having done that, you then hit the back arrow to go back. And then we have the flight mode set up, and that's for this thing up here that I told you about, the switch up here at the top to be able to change different flight modes. With that, if I want to have that, then I go down here to this switch number 1, I press it in, and as is the case with most of the things in the menu, when I flick the switch, it then shows that switch here. So that's switch C that I just flicked up here. And as I flicked switch C, it filled in switch C down there. If that's what I want, I select it. You could have different switches do different things with the flight modes, but myself, I like to keep it simple and just have that one switch. And actually, that was this switch that I used. Yeah, switch C is that one. So I like the one switch for the flight modes. Okay, having done that, I can get out of that. Spoken flight mode is already going to be set up, and that's just simply what it's going to do when you flick the switch. So I can say test, and that's not very loud, but that said flight mode 2.
Flight mode 3.
Flight mode 3, so you can test what it's going to say. In the preferences menu, there'll be a volume control, and certainly we'd want this volume to be louder than that. We'll get to that eventually. Channel assign, you don't have to worry about that at this stage, nor these other things that we have down here. So given that we want the sound to be louder while we're here, we might as well take care of this. We'll go down to preferences, and this is in the same menu here. Preferences, select that. Got a variety of different things, so we can adjust the screen brightness. But we've got matter here of volume controls. So on that second screen, we go to the volume controls. So we got flight modes over here. So I just take that up to 100. All of these things turn to 100, might as well. Okay. So that's all that we have to do with regard to that. So we back out of this. That's all we have to do in the system setup mode. But we still have some other things that we want to do. So press on the wheel again. And now we're going to check a variety of things. Moving from the top to the bottom, you first off have the servo set up. And as you go to this top item here, you'll see there's a whole bunch of stuff that's in here. You don't have to worry about travel. Sub-trim, you might. Generally, if when you're setting up your plane and you eyeball things, you try to get everything as close as you can just by adjusting linkages. But you might need to use a sub-trim to get things straightened out just by sight before you even go and fly it. And then use your trim tabs in the flight to do the fine set of trim. But the key thing is this reverse menu. If you've got a control that's going in the opposite direction to where it's supposed to go, you reverse it. With ailerons, if you put the stick to the right aileron should go up. The stick to the left aileron should go up. And if it's opposite, then well, you just come in here, you go to reverse, you enter it, come down here to aileron, click on that, and that's reversed it. And back. Now, key thing to note is that the throttle is not for changing the direction of which way the prop is spinning, okay? You reverse the throttle, instead of zero throttle being at the bottom, zero throttle is up there. And this is full throttle down here. That's reversing the throttle. So no, you don't want to do that. Not a good idea. So just make sure all the controls are going in the right direction. There's other things in this menu as well, but this is the important one. Immediately, what we're going to be doing is working on the rates in Expo. And what rates in Expo has to do with is how far is a control going to go when you move the stick all of the way. And essentially on your instructions on the aircraft, it will tell you how many millimeters or inches or whatever that control needs to move on the outside when it goes up or down. And it will give you a suggestion for low rates and for high rates. So what you do is you, like say first off here we're into aileron, and you move the aileron and you can see how this graphic is moving down here to the extreme down at the end. You move that all the way down and you see how far that went. And that would determine whether you need to go more or less. But before we go and change anything, we want to go here and assign the switch for the flight modes. So we're going to select that. We're then going to flick the switch for flight modes. That puts that switch C into there. Press in on the wheel to select it. And so now we've got these three different flight modes. Now right off the bat, as you see the black highlighting of the entire square, and you see the little black dot underneath the square, that's telling you two things. The little dot at the bottom is telling you the position of the switch. So whether it's in the position 0, 1, or 2. The black highlight tells you what is activated when the switch is in that position. So I could have a situation that you wouldn't with this, but you could have a situation where the switch is in the 0 position, but you want the flight mode to be flight mode 2. You know. So anyway, the key thing here is with flight modes, we don't have to worry, they're going to all be together. But keep in mind that whichever box is filled in is what's active when the switch is in that position. So we're now in flight mode 0. So let's say the plans tell us that we need to have a much lower distance of travel when we're in that low rates situation. So what we do is we go up here to rates and we do reduce that rate. Okay, so let's say we're down to 70%, something like that. So you can see now at the far extreme, when the stick is all the way over there, it's down at a lower position. That's the overall rate. So with that, we've got a smaller movement of the control surface to be at that extreme. But it's all going to be linear going up to that point. It's for whatever small distance we travel here, it's going to move in a certain part, and if we move that same distance farther, it's going to move again that much extra, same amount. It's all linear. But we can add Expo in here. And Expo is where it goes to something that's nonlinear. And let's say we had 30% Expo, something like that. So now you can see that for movements of the stick near the middle, and this is the stick movement going side to side, and it's the control movement going up and down. So for small movements on the stick, it's very small movements on the control. But for large movements of the stick, we're still getting those full movements of the control up to whatever we've set for the rate. So we've got a rate and we've got an expo. Right now we're on mode 1, so I can go up here, switch the switch, go to mode 2. So now we see, well, mode 2, I call it 1, 2, and 3. But anyway, for the second mode, with that switch in the middle position, you see it has reverted to 100% and 0 expo. So we had 70% for mode 1. So for the next one, let's go for, say, 85%. So we say 85. And if we want the expo to be allowing the movements in the small movements near the middle to be roughly the same for all of the modes, and for the extreme movements to be where the big difference is, then what we want to do is we'll probably start out picking just something that's a little bit higher than what we had. And then we will move the stick to a given spot, and we might say something around 30. And you see this number down here? That's telling us the stick position, and that's telling us the control position. So here in mode 1, around 30, it's minus 13. Mode 2, I got minus 14. So that's pretty close, okay? But we might want to just add just a tiny bit more. So around 30, minus 14, now that's very close, okay? Around 30, minus 13, yeah, that's close enough to be absolute yet. Now, what you want to make sure is when you do that, don't go changing the number when you've got the stick pushed over, because if you do that, it's only going to change one of the numbers. You don't want one number different than the other one. One has to do with going up, and the other one has to do with going down or right and left and so forth. So you don't want to be different when you're turning right than when you're turning left. So make sure you change the numbers when the sticks are in their middle position. Okay, so that is setting the aileron, and then of course having gone to 1 and 2, then you'd probably do something, you'd do something for the mode 3, that whatever you might think is appropriate for that, and you can go through a similar check with regard to that one. So you got 3 different modes. They're all pretty similar as far as what's happening here near the inside, but big difference as far as what's happening when the stick's over all of the way. Having done that for the aileron, you then would go up to the elevator. And so elevator is the next one, and so you do the same sort of thing. You look at the plans and you see how much it needs to travel. You set your switch to switch for the modes, and then you go up, set the switch for the modes, hit enter to have it stay. And then you do the same sort of thing with the rates to get whatever the factory has recommended, and put in an expo as to whatever you're going to feel comfortable with. And the expo is a very personal thing. Some people don't like it at all, especially old-time flyers that are not used to it. For most of us, we would find that we're comfortable having something in there, and perhaps something around 30% might be a place to start. My basic rule of thumb with regard to it is I would want to make sure that when I move the stick very slightly, just a very slight movement of the stick, that I can actually see a movement of the control. And if I move it just a couple of millimeters and I don't see any movement of the control, then that expo is too high. I would need to reduce it a bit to where with real fine movement I see some movement of the control. And that is sort of a minimum, and then anything you want to go lower than that would be fine. But anything higher than that, no good. Okay, so that gives you the elevator, and you do the same thing for the rudder. Okay, so each one you're going to be making those adjustments. You'll be going to it, selecting it, come down, select the switch. Having selected the switch, you put that in there, then go in there and adjust the rates to whatever you want, put in the expo for whatever you want, and that's all set. You get then out of the rates in the expo, throttle cut. Now this is the one where it's important to understand about those little blocks. So first off, you need to pick a switch. So go down here to where it highlights inhibit, press in, so that's selected. And then I like this switch back here. It's a two-position switch, so they're only going to be in one place or the other. And like I say, I like the safe type things, so they'll all be away from me. So I now have that switch H identified by the radio because I flicked that switch. I press enter. But now you see with the switch in that back position, it shows a dot under the 0, but the black is over on the number 1. So what that's saying is that it's when it's on the number 1 position that the throttle is going to be cut. It's a throttle cut. So it's active. That means the throttle is cut when it's on the black position, which is that position there. I want the throttle cut to be in this position. So what I do is I come down here, get on that first thing, press the thing in, that changes it to black, move over to the second one, press in, change it to white, and now I've got the situation where when it's here in the back position, the throttle is cut. It's active, it's blackened in on that square when I've got the little dot underneath it, and then when I push it into the position towards me, it's over there where it's not cut. So as you look at the control thing down here, you can see that on the edge I've got the throttle going up and down, and that's because the throttle is active. It's not cut. If I have the throttle cut activated to where the throttle is cut, then when I go to move the stick, nothing is happening to the throttle. Okay? Certainly you don't want to put a delay in there for a throttle cut. I'm not even sure why they even have that in there in this particular menu. Some things it would be appropriate to have that, but no delay. It's going to happen straight away. And requiring stick load, there'd be some things that you'd want to say, I don't want this to happen if the throttle is activated. But in this particular case, it's good to have that down there to just make sure that when the throttle cut is cut, it's really cut and nothing can change that. So our throttle is cut, we go back. Throttle curve, you don't have to worry about that given you're not flying a helicopter. A helicopter, you'd have a situation where you bring it up to a certain point and then you just hold it in that certain point. We don't need to do that. Analog and digital switch setup, you don't need to worry about those. It's if you're setting up additional switches for additional channels, logical switches, you don't need to worry about that, nor combo. Mixing, you don't have to worry about. Range test is something that will happen, but you won't be using this menu. But this menu is good to show you what's taking place. So if I go in there, you can see right now we're at full power. But if I press this button up here on the top, when I press that in, I now have reduced power. That's for a range test. Test distance 30 meters. So take, when you get your plane set up, you get everything all set to go, have your throttle cut in the cut position so it's safe. Check out your controls to make sure things are going into control. Then walk out 30 meters, and when you get out to 30 meters, press in the button to where it goes to reduce power, and then with the button held in there, try your different controls and see that you can see that they're moving and stuff. And that gives you assurance that you've got adequate power from your transmitter to be able to control the plane when it gets at far distances when it's at full power. The range test is reducing the power of the transmission down to a fraction of the total, and it's a good way to make sure that everything is good. Okay, timer is the next thing, and with a timer, again, you may have a recommendation in your plans as to how long it's likely to be, but if you're not sure, you can do some calculations on the milliamp hours and stuff like that, but basically start at maybe 3 minutes or something like that. Bring the plane back, have a look at the battery, plug it into your battery meter to see how much of a charge you still have. And you want to basically plan for, if you're doing really light flying and things like that, to have it down just a tiny bit below 50% capacity when you finish your flight. And that will allow you to then be able to do some more aggressive things when you're putting more stuff into the throttle and stuff like that and still be okay, you know. But you'll be monitoring that, and this is where you would adjust that. You want it to start when the throttle stick is going up to a certain point. So it's saying throttle stick is over 25%. That's saying that when the stick gets up over, when your throttle stick gets up over 25%, it's going to start the timer. And as long as it's up over 25%, the timer is going to be operating. If you pull it down below 25%, it'll stop. And this is not a one-time thing. It's something that will keep on going on and off as you move that throttle above and below 25%. Okay, so you got a countdown timer, 5 minutes. So then go down here to the next. And this will be what resets the timer. Okay, then having gone to the next screen, we then see various warnings that we can get. So you have a choice of a variety of different things. Inhibit, the INH, anytime you see that's inhibit, so that means it's not activated. But in this particular case, from 20 seconds, well, at 20 seconds, we're going to get a single tone. Then from 10 seconds to 1 second, we're going to get a tone. But I like to have one other thing in there, and that is every minute, I would like to have a voice that tells me where we're at. So every minute, it will tell us 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. And then when we get down to just 20 seconds to go, we'll get a beep. Then at 10 seconds, beep, 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 beep for the last 10 seconds. And then when it expires, be a tone. Or you could put a voice in there to say timer's expired. You can actually add the vibration as well, voice vibe. So make it really obvious that, hey, you know, our time is out. Better get this plane down. Okay, so that's all of our timer things. Function bar, this function button down here gives you shortcuts to things, and you'd put them there in the function bar. We won't bother with that. Bind is what you're going to use when you set up the plane. And anytime you've got a transmitter and a receiver with modern day radio control, the receiver is going to be bound to the transmitter. And we'll go through that in a separate video, but basically you power up your receiver, either press in the bind button or you've powered it up with a bind plug in place. It starts flashing rapidly. You then go to this bind menu. It tells you to put that receiver in the bind menu into the bind mode first. You say continue, you go over here, you hit bind, and then it's going to connect to that receiver. The receiver will stop flashing rapidly. You'll get a solid light on the receiver, and that means that this transmitter will be connected to that receiver, and it'll be looking for what this is telling it to do, not what somebody else's transmitter is telling it what to do. Okay, so that's bind, and we don't have to worry about these other things. Okay, so that's your basic setup for a plane, and quite plain and simple. In a separate video, we'll go ahead and go through the rest of the menus, which are more complicated, but this is basically what it's all about. So I trust that this has been helpful to you. If you found that to be the case, you probably want to subscribe. Just click on the little circle there with my picture in it. That keeps these things handy. Have a look at another relevant video over here. And of course, we really appreciate it when down at the bottom you click that little like button. I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day and enjoy your flying.